You're listening to the ADHD and Me podcast. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jen, and we're so excited to share the strategies we've learned while navigating life as neurodivergents.
Each week, we'll discuss topics such as relationships, careers, mental health, and a lot more.
You'll get two unique perspectives on life's challenges, successes, and everything in between.
So without further ado, here's this week's episode. Welcome back to the ADHD and Me podcast. My name's Joe.
And I'm Jen.
And in this episode, we're going to be discussing the struggles of ADHD, kind of beyond its core symptoms like, having focus problems or the hyperactivity. This is more of like the everyday struggles that you have to deal with on a daily basis and how both you can manage that yourself, but also if you have loved ones, they can try to help support you when you're going through those struggles. So we wrote down a few things that we wanted to go over, and let's start with the first one.
So I'm not going to lie to you, I'm struggling really hard this week. I've been struggling for the last 2 weeks. I've been on the ADHD struggle bus. And so we're talking about ADHD struggles today because I feel like it was just so necessary to kind of be real and raw and just be like, hey, every day is not going to be great. Every week is not going to be great, especially when you're struggling with ADHD. And so we had wrote down, imagine living in a world where managing your brain is a daily job. For someone with ADHD, that's reality. While neurotypical brains operate somewhat on autopilot, ADHD brains require constant attention and effort. Taking a day off from your strategies, medication, routines, coping mechanisms can lead to a domino effect of disorganization, missed deadlines, and emotional overwhelm. And I've been feeling that way. Just like, if I don't take my medication, it's rough. If I do take it, I'm so focused on the job that I'm doing so hard that I get like tension headaches. I get side effects where I'm just unable to like think about anything else.
Or you're just burned out from focusing so much.
Yeah. It's not
skipping
like
so locked in that once you're done with that task, you're like, I'm on empty.
Yeah.
I don't got anything left in the tank.
Mm-hmm. And it's like also like the part of my brain that I'm working with is the creative brain because I'm in a creative role. And so to try and be creative whilst the medication is kind of combating that part of my brain and wants to like focus on the focus, I will pick a creative idea and go down a rabbit hole, and like 2 hours will pass by and I'm like, okay, well, I went down this whole rabbit hole of different creative ideas, but there was X, Y, and Z that I wanted to get done as well. So I think that's why the timers are such a big thing for me. Like I can't forget to set my visual timer, my colored timer, or I can't forget to set a timer on my phone. If I forget a single thing, which is like something that helps me, if I miss it, then it's a domino effect. It's so true. It's exhausting.
Yeah, and I think for this in particular, taking a day off feels like it sets you back more than a day.
Yeah.
Because there is days off. Like you could, there's probably so many people right now who are undiagnosed ADHD and they're not doing anything particular to cope with it. And it's just very hard. But I think it's like for you, you've found different ways that you can manage your ADHD and it's worked. It's just now you've come to the realization that like that is a job in and of itself. Like, it's a part-time job.
It is.
Managing the ADHD itself is the part-time job on top of a full-time job. And yeah, I could see it just in our day-to-day. Like, when there are days where I feel like just totally like drained, I can only imagine what that feels from your end because you are dealing with that extra layer of like complexity.
Yeah. I can even tell, like, at the end of the day, I call it, like, the witching hour, where it's just, like, at around, I want to say, like, 5, or, like, 4, probably, like, 4:35. That's when I'm, like, full batteries, like, empty. Because it's just, like, I'm spending the day fully focused on work. nonstop, hour by hour, talking to people, having meetings, trying to be creative, trying to be organized, setting my visual timers, setting up my reminders, making sure I'm not messing up anything or posting the wrong thing. It's yeah, and like even just an ADHD in social media, a job like that, it's a lot of stimulation where I'm just like, oh, I can get easily pulled into any part of social media and be like, oh no, like I was working on this. I was trying to find, creative ideas for different posts and inspiration. And then I got sucked into something else. And I'm just like, no, come on back.
Yeah, we wrote down living with ADHD often means putting in twice the effort for the same results. So simple tasks that other people breeze through can take immense concentration and planning for someone with ADHD. And this constant exertion can be just incredibly draining, leading to feelings of frustration and inadequacy.
I said this to Joe, and I was like, everything in life is like multiple choice for an ADHD person. And so there's so many routes you can take, decisions you can make, but you have a hard time deciding because of your executive dysfunction or function? Yeah. So basically, like, I have a hard time deciding what the right answer is. So I'm trying them all until one clicks. And so that's just what it feels like every single day. I'm just like, okay, like, remember, like what we said on the podcast. I'm like thinking of our previous podcast. I'm even saying it to Joe. It's like a constant reminder. You can't just be like, okay, I know the information, I can move on now. No, every day is like you're going to class. You're in college. You have to put in the work.
Yeah, and I feel like it's more of a burden once you become aware of it. Because this is not just with ADHD, even with like OCPD.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I'm aware of why I feel this way or why I feel I have the urge to act this way. So you have to make the hard struggle to be like, all right, let me respond in the right way. Even though I just kind of want to like give up, throw my hands up and like go in, like just kind of give in to the impulses.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean like that day-to-day decision making is very taxing.
And I think also like when you have a child in the mix that, I mean, she's not evaluated, but she does everything that I do. It's uncanny how similar we are. She even has similarities to him where everything has to be just so and exactly her way. Like she has to hold a remote, like, but it's rough because when you are the parent and you are emotionally dysregulated and you are spent and you are exhausted mentally, physically, and everything, right? You have to not basically just throw in the towel and be like, I'm not a parent today.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to, respond to all of your tons of questions or needs, right? Like, if she's having a meltdown, I have to think to myself, even though I'm emotionally dysregulated and I want to be her having the meltdown, I have to help her in that moment and then put my mask on later. Like, push me down, mask it, and then deal with that later. And that is even more, and I can only imagine if someone has to do that as a single parent, right? Yeah.
Or having a partner who doesn't understand. Because I feel like, again, going back to like both of us understanding diagnosis and everything, I couldn't really understand why Jen had to retreat sometimes to the room and have this kind of like quiet time, this reset. And now I'm so aware of it that like, I understand that after a certain overstimulating day, I know what Jen needs to reset, and I understand that, and I could be supportive of that. And I feel like there's probably a lot of people out there, we've read it in books too. There's a lot of ADHD people who have spouses who are non-ADHD, and they can't really, they haven't done the research. They don't understand what ADHD is, and they just see someone who's like, oh, I'm just gonna tap out and go into the room for a while, or I'm going to go out, or I'm going to remove myself from the situation. But, parenting with ADHD or parenting someone who has ADHD, again, it just tacks onto the daily, we always go back to the HP, but it is part of your HP is going to be taken up by that by default. So by default, part of your HP is taken up by parenting. Part of your HP is taken up by managing your ADHD in general. And then whatever's left over is what you got for work. It's what you've got for, you know, your day-to-day stuff. So
yeah. And I don't know like why I'm getting like so misty-eyed, because I'm just like, it's just exhausting. And I'm just trying to have a balance. But like sometimes it's just like I just want to wake up and not have to think about all the different strategies that I need to implement in order to have a decent day.
Yeah, and speaking of those strategies, so I've now been reading the book How to ADHD by Jessica McCabe, and it's been really eye-opening for me. Because I mean, I loved the ADHD effect on marriage. That was great to understand, like, baseline what ADHD is and kind of how to operate within a marriage. But this kind of delves more deeper into, like, someone who had, you know, what they experienced throughout their whole life and all of the different treatments that you could seek for ADHD and how different combinations work for different people in different situations. So just like to rattle off some of the different treatment options, of course, you got medication as a treatment option. There's psychoeducation, which is really just kind of equipping yourself with knowledge about ADHD. There's skills training, going back to the parenting, figuring out how can I best parent either with ADHD or someone who has it. There's therapy, of course. There's ADHD coaches, and then there's support from your family and friends. And so that's a lot of things that we just rattled off. And depending on your situation, you need to find the right combination of what's going to work for you. The combination of medication versus therapy, or coaching versus, you know, having the right support around you with either other people with ADHD or your friends and your family. And that has to be taken into account. You know, when Jen decides that she needs to, you know, get a project done, there is this extra thought of like, okay, should I take my medication now?
Yeah.
Should I take it like later on? How do I time this perfectly so that when I take my medication, I'm working and not doing something else, or I will get even further off the task?
Yeah.
So all of that is just like going on in your brain.
It's like multiple choice.
Yeah. Like, how do I do it?
You're in an RPG and you're just like, okay, do I choose A, B, C?
And other treatments that are not on here is just like, you know, exercise, taking walks,
physical, and like, diet too. It's what what you're eating. There's certain things that, you know, if you're eating this, it's going to affect you poorly. If you're eating that, it's going to affect you in a positive way. Like, it's just there's so many. We'll have to do an episode on that, just like you know, food and exercise and how that helps. But it's just, you know, I don't want to be like discouraging, but I also don't want to paint us in a light where it's like, oh, you know, we have a podcast and like we know and everything's great, and like, no, like that's just not how it is. It's work. It's every day, and it doesn't end. You don't get you don't get PTO when you're working on yourself. It's just multiple. It's work for yourself individually, right? That's one. And then there's work for each other. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, I've got ADHD, he's got OCPD, so he's got to work on himself, and then we got to work on this. And then it's figuring out how to function with our child and parenting well. And then on top of that, it's figuring out how to function in our families, friends, relationships. And then on top of that, in our careers. There's so many different aspects of it and layers to it. And there's different skills and things that you need for different parts of your day and life. And it's hard to keep track of it all. That's why I think like journaling, brain dumping, kind of like emptying it out and just putting things into quadrants, I think is just really, really helpful.
I think just to reiterate what you said, like, it's important to make it like clear that just because you are aware of your ADHD and know different ways to treat it or help it,
Yeah.
it still doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get it right every time, or it still doesn't mean that you're going to be able to manage it in the most, best way possible for you, just because life is unpredictable.
Yeah.
And there's other factors outside of your day-to-day work or your day-to-day life. There's outside factors that are going to, throw you curveballs that you weren't prepared for.
I'm really like grateful for you and your patience and like understanding and like wanting to learn. Sometimes it's hard to have a partner that like wants to put in the work and learn about something that they don't have, that they're not affected by, because it's like, I don't know. It's just, I'm really glad, because if he hadn't had done the homework, read the book, he's even reading this book. He does not have ADHD, and he's reading this thick book. I mean, I've read thicker books, but you know what I mean? Like, it just shows initiative. It shows, like, okay, I care about you, and I want to know more about you so that we can communicate better, and I can better understand, and we can both just, like, I don't know, have less of a roadblock.
For me, reading up on it, it just, like, especially because we still have lived, like, it's you forget, but we've lived the majority of our lives not knowing about ADHD versus knowing.
Yeah.
We've only known about it for a handful of years. So for me, I'm reading about this woman's childhood, and I'm just, like, comparing it to what Jen has told me, and things are, like, clicking. Like, so many things are, like, coming together. Is like, I would talk to Jen while she was doing something and go on, like, a full, like, TED talk, and then she would not hear a single word I said. And
You didn't believe me.
Did not believe her. I was like, how is it possible?
He'd be so tilted.
How is it possible that you did not hear a single word of what I said? And then I'm reading in this book about how when someone's hyper-focused in, literally the world washes away.
Yeah. Or if I don't remember, like if I'm asking him a question or something and he's already said the answer to me another day or that day or even like a few hours ago, he's like, what are you talking about? Why would you even ask me that? You don't know? Like, and he'd just be like so mean.
Yeah.
But now he's just like, okay. Makes sense. It's on brand.
Let me re-explain.
But you know what? I on the flip side, I'm really grateful that I know more about you now, because now I'm like, I can, when, what is it? Movie, it's Gremlins. And like the cute little fluffy gremlin. Yeah. And then if you get the gremlin wet, it turns into like an evil gremlin.
Yeah.
Right? And so now I know, like, this is such a weird analogy.
Interesting analogy choice.
I know when you're not going to be the fluffy gremlin anymore because of certain things that happen, or I could see you turning into, your furriness is going away, right? And you're like I'm going to be mad at Harper when she's, doing something, and I'm just like, calm down, take a break, or I'll like communicate to you, like, remember, it's because of this. Or remember, she's probably feeling a certain type of way. Like, try to not do this. And like, I'm trying to communicate with you in a way so that you can like get out of your usual mindset and be like, okay, like this is not what I think it is. Or especially if you like want to work out or don't work out. Like, I don't know. I like knowing what's important to you. That way I can make sure I can support you in different ways. So the next thing here that I want to talk about is that ADHD is an invisible disorder. It makes it difficult for others to truly understand the daily struggles. There's an invisible load you carry, constantly explaining your behavior and needs to those who don't experience the world the same way. It's very exhausting. So I agree with this. But again, like in general, life, right? You don't know what anybody's going through, right? At home, in their marriage, in their relationships, in their life in general, like, you don't know. That's just if you're ADHD or not.
Sure.
But that plus coming off as like, oh, you can't see the disability that I have. Like, you can't, there's no sign on my chest. There's no different things. And so like people will treat you a certain way and wonder why you're not able to do it, or like just like different things they could say to you, like, oh, I have anxiety all the time, or like I have this too, like you don't have ADHD, like then that means everybody has it, like just different things like that. It's just really frustrating because yeah, you could be all over the place and you could have symptoms of ADHD, especially in the world today with the technology and all the social media and all the access to screens and everything. Of course, everyone is distracted right now, sure. 100%. But there's so many other layers to it, and to struggle with it so badly that you become like me, where I was a Willy Wonka grandparent for a bit, and I was just like, you would have thought that I couldn't walk. I did not leave that bed in 2020, so it's rough. It's rough. It makes me want to like scream because I'm just like the amount of times like I'll like, I think a few times like I'll like be in church and they'll be like, you okay? Like are you all right? Like calm down. And I'm just like, I'm fine. Like it's just you know, I guess my face doesn't hide my overstimulation very well. And I try and I mask as much as I possibly can because I know people are looking. So like I try to be like I'm good. And then I don't make that face anymore because I don't want people to ask me if I'm okay, if I'm all right. Because then I'll have to be like, no, I'm not.
Yeah. No, the invisibility portion of it is something that, like you were saying, like people who are really like unaware of it, they can just view someone as lazy. They could view someone at they could view a coworker as like, why are you always late? Or why? And not realize that like them saying those things about you, it's just like, it's making assumptions, but I think you hit the nail on the head. You don't really truly know what's going on in someone's life.
No.
And so you have to just be mindful of that. You know, maybe take a second thought before you make an assumption about who somebody is.
And I think also like even in families, when you like, for example, if you are late diagnosed like me, you might have families that are going to question your diagnosis and be like, what do you mean? Like, I would have caught this earlier. What are you talking about? Like, you weren't bouncing off the walls as a little girl. No, because it's different in girls than it is for young boys. Like, it presents differently, and that's a scientific fact. That's why a lot of women go undiagnosed for so long. And you find yourself having to defend yourself and defend how you communicate, defend your child that acts just like you, and defend them and make sure that they're not being called a brat, that they're not being called, you know, all these different names, or being made to feel bad when they're overstimulated. It's tough. So now that we've gone over all of the doom and gloom emo part of ADHD, I just want to end the podcast with some positive like strategies that I plan on implementing. Like I did already before we recorded. I was like, Joe, I'm feeling off. I'm feeling the crash. I'm feeling like completely empty. I need to go for a walk. And he's like, well, but I think it's going to rain. It's cloudy. I was like, I don't care. I was like, let the rain fall down. Like, what's that song?
Hilary
Duff. Yeah, let it rain on my head. I
Sure.
don't care. I just need to feel something, and I need to get out of this house. And sometimes a change of scenery can make all the difference. If you're feeling like you're in a funk, maybe get in your car and put on music that you love and drive around. You have nowhere to go, drive around your block in circles and listen to that music, listen to a podcast or an audiobook. Like I said, the dopa menu before, like different things for that. So doing an exercise indoors, a few jumping jacks, or something that's like weird is that I like to sing. I like to sing really loud, and I'm just like, we'll sing in the shower or sing. And it's just like, I don't know. It just helps. You can do silly dances. Like there's just different things that I plan on doing as soon as we end this. I want to do my bullet journaling, and it's like little crafts, or like you have your coloring books. And I know it sounds childish, but you know what? When you have an adult ADHD, I don't think there's a difference between child strategies and adult, because coloring helps, art helps.
Yeah, and I think they help because it's like it almost lets your brain loose.
Yes.
Right? Because like you're spending so much time trying to rein in your focus. You're spending so much time trying to get your brain to just like lock in, and then it's burning you out.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like, okay, well, how do I get out of this funk? And I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, they're not childish crafts. Like journaling or scrapbooking, that's like, it's a empty canvas, and it's giving permission to your brain to be like, have at it.
Yeah.
Like, let's see what comes out of this.
Yeah.
And it almost like reestablishes the ADHD brain so that you can then like move on to whatever task or whatever stage of the day that you need to get to. I mean, I think breaks in general, from what I've seen, have been a huge help for you, even if they're short breaks. Like, even if they're very short 10-15-minute breaks, that can make a difference in your day.
But also, like, even when I would take breaks, I remember I was breaking wrong. So I would be like, oh, my break is scrolling on TikTok. That's my break.
Yeah.
Or my break is I'm going to watch a TV show, or I'm going to watch a movie. Or me and you will be like, we're exhausted, let's put on a movie, right? But none of those things filled my cup.
Sure.
And so it just made my brain wander. But even, this sounds weird, and I do this with Joe, and I haven't mentioned this. I didn't even tell you that I was going to say this. But I do this thing where I lay on the bed and I want him to crush me. So he lays on top and just like lets his full weight like go
No
on.
people were harmed in this.
No people were harmed. And I just, the feeling of pressure, it's like, this is like a sensory thing, but like the feeling, like a weighted blanket, or like sometimes I'll tell him to give me like a really tight hug. I don't know. It helps. I don't know why. It just does. And even with Harper, I'm like, all right, hug me real tight. Okay, release. Now hug me again as tight as you can. And it's just like different pressurized pressure points. And another thing that's important, and I'll end with this so we don't talk so long, but it's remembering your senses, right? Like smell, touch, sight, sound, right? And focus on those. If you're so like unsure of where to begin, just pick each sense and pick one thing for it. So for example, this morning I was not well. So I put on my diffuser. And I put on my essential oils of lavender and, eucalyptus. I put that on, and I was like, ooh. I was like, oh, it smells really calming in here. It smells like a spa, right? And then for touch, I was like, okay, let me grab my favorite cardigan. Let me put that on and feel how soft it is, right? Let me put on some lotion so I can, like, feel the cream. There's different things. There's all the different senses go through and do something little for it. And I feel like that can do something, because it does for me.
Well, we really hope you were able to better understand the ADHD struggles, how different strategies can help you through them. But also, I think our main goal here was to really just give you a real account of like what it is like sometimes for people with ADHD. Even though you're aware, there's going to be these days where things are just more of a struggle than they usually are. We're going to get through this portion of the struggle, and we're going to move on, and we're looking forward to more episodes where we can, chat about other great things that ADHD could be a help with.
Yeah, maybe I'll get some ice cream tonight.
Ooh, maybe. All right, well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode.
You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at ADHD and Me Podcast.
Our theme song is by @It'sOfBo. We will see you there, or we will see you on another time.